My name's Sean Ellis, and I coined the term growth hacking a little over 10 years ago, but I've really been doing what most of us would think of as growth hacking, or at least parts of it, for the last 25 years. And part of that is because when I started, I really didn't have a background in marketing. Like many of you, I didn't start in Silicon Valley, so I didn't kind of tap into the echo chamber of how things should be done. The first two companies I started were in Eastern Europe, and the first company was a company called Uproar, where I actually had invested everything I had into the business, and it's a lot more focused on how do we make this thing successful rather than how do I look good as the marketing guy there. And so really was able to just figure out, in the world of digital, what should be done. What are the opportunities, from tracking and testing. And so by not having a background, that turned out to be the perfect background to have. So I didn't bring a lot of baggage from the old ways of doing things, and was able to just go in so Uproar was a game site that ultimately became one of the top 10 websites in the world. We then started another company called LogMeIn in Eastern Europe that became worth billions of dollars. And again, a lot of what we were doing was pretty different than what they teach in a marketing book. And it wasn't until I actually moved to Silicon Valley in 2007 that I saw there were a few companies doing something similar to how I was approaching growth. And we all know those companies. So the Facebooks of the world and the LinkedIn's. And so seeing that the majority of companies were not taking that approach, but there were a few that were, I thought it needed a name. And so that's where the name growth hacking came from. What you're doing is you're analyzing the situation and trying to figure out better ways of doing everything in your business. So particularly when it comes to growth, how could we better onboard users? How could we better engage users? How could we better reach potential users? And you take all of these ideas that you have, and then you prioritize which ones you want to test first. You run the tests, you analyze the results, and as you repeat that process, you drive better and better results in the business. And so while I may have coined the term growth hacking, the idea is really based on something that we all learned about in school, which is just the scientific method. And the scientific method is generally how we drive innovation in the world and improvement. Everything in the world, there's a better way of doing it. And so it takes someone to come up with ideas, really hypothesis-based ideas, and then test those ideas. It's kind of a simple formula, and it often sounds too simplistic, but ultimately, the more experiments you run, the more you learn about how to effectively grow the business. And so a good example is Twitter in the early days. Around 50 million users, Twitter's growth really started to flatten out, and a new actually head of product came into the business and said, how many tests are we running? We've got 50 million people. We have enough sample size that we could probably be running lots of tests. And he discovered they were only running a couple of tests per month. And so for Twitter, he just had this simple directive, which was let's actually let's up that to 10 tests per week. So from a couple of tests per month to 40 tests per month. So a big boost. But you can see as soon as they started increasing the number of tests they were running, you can see that growth really resumed in the business. And again, without testing, there's no new learning. There's really no ability to drive improvement. And so it makes sense that the more testing you run, the more you're going to learn better ways to do things. Sometimes revenue does not indicate value. So we've all bought crappy things off of television or off of the web that we afterwards think, why the hell did I buy this? I never actually use it. So from a revenue perspective, that looks good. And then also if we think more in SaaS, so for subscription-based software, maybe you only have an annual plan and someone uses a product for the first month, but in terms of ARR, in terms of that annual recurring revenue, they look like an active user for the next 12 months. But if they're not actively getting benefit from the product, then you know that 12 months from now they're not going to renew, and that value is going to drop, and the revenue is going to drop. And so what we want to make sure is that as we're growing revenue, that value is growing at the same pace. And so if we optimize on value, we know that it's going to be much more sustainable. The other benefit is that maybe the finance team or maybe the sales team are actually motivated by revenue, but the truth is most employees in a company are a lot more motivated by impact and value and serving customer needs. And so, from a kind of mission and meaning in the business, values a lot more motivating for most of the team. Traditionally, we just think of acquisition as the main lever to optimize. So we come up with new ways to reach potential customers. But we know if they don't actually effectively use the product and get value from the product, they're never coming back. And so that's going to hurt long-term retention, and we're not going to drive real growth in the business. If we can get existing users to use more often, that's going to be really important to driving value. We can get existing users to refer others. So that was our main channel at Dropbox. That becomes super valuable. If we can optimize our revenue per customer, then we can fund our acquisition efforts. And so revenue actually becomes a growth loop in itself that it makes it a lot easier to effectively acquire and convert and retain customers. And any improvement in any of these areas tends to improve your North Star metric. But if we can drive improvement in all of those areas, we're really gonna see a good boost in the North Star metric. You don't focus on growth until you build a foundation of things that really matter. And so at the very bottom of the pyramid, the most important foundational element is product market fit. So all the things that I've talked about, if you don't have product market fit, nothing else matters. You focus on product market fit, and you focus on finding must-have users that hopefully represent a pretty big market. And so not everyone who tries your product is going to use it long-term, but you need to have enough people who try it, use it long-term, consider it a must-have for you to be able to have any opportunity to drive sustainable growth. The next level is about instrumenting for growth. And so the tracking systems, that's on the kind of quantitative metric side, but also qualitatively, how are we actually understanding users' needs and why they love us, and when they give up, why they give up. So kind of qualitative, quantitative testing infrastructure so that you can actually run tests going forward. But this is also the stage where you want to identify that North Star metric. And so the North Star metric is really a function of your product market fit. And so if you understand the core value that makes your product a must-have, then your North Star metric is easier to define. Once you're instrumented, you have strong product market fit, and you've identified your key metric, now you can focus on actually growing that metric. And so that's when you might want to introduce a growth team, depending on your size. If you're a really small company, maybe it's a single growth person who's working with the broader team to drive growth. But as you grow, growth teams scale a lot better than individuals. And so, and then they're following this test learn process that I shared. The more testing that you're running, the more you need to organize those learnings. So you need a good system for organizing the learnings. And then over time, they are going to hit those hurdles where they want to be able to test in all high leverage opportunities in the business. And that's when you really have to make sure the broader team is aligned around testing and is able to identify those high impact opportunities and essentially allow that test learn process to be applied in those high impact opportunities. And over time, as you get more wins from your testing, you're able to develop a company-wide growth mindset and culture. Everything starts with value. Value is what defines product market fit. Value is what defines that North Star metric. If you focus on speed to value, and getting new people to reach a valuable experience, that's what builds sustainable growth in the business. So you really need to understand that value and work hard to get the right customers to experience that value. How you get them to experience the value is the rapid systematic testing. That test learn process that I call growth hacking is how you accelerate value delivery. Remember that you're doing it not just in traditional areas of the test learn process, like customer acquisition, but you're doing it across all of those levers. And in order to do it across all of those levers, you need that broader team buy-in, and then the team's much more likely to buy into the need for testing and learning when they have a shared mission, a shared North Star metric. And so that's going to be critical for driving that